And so that's, you know, really how, I don't know, we've kind of evolved over the years with these courts.
Denny, we had a question from one of our audience members about how closely staff at Scranton Counseling works with the mental health court and the prison system as well. So I was wondering if you could just touch upon that briefly.
I'm stationed at the county jail, and so I get to see people as they actually come through the door or shortly afterwards. So Scranton, I've kind of done that for a while, but we formalized that a few years back, probably 5 or 6 years back. I wasn't there all the time. I was director of crisis intervention like Ernie was. But then I sort of filtered into the county jail, and then we got involved in mental health court. And so I sit in on the mental health court. I sit in on making referrals to the mental health court, reviewing them as they come in from the attorneys. Scranton Counseling Center also has decided to give every consumer from our area an ICM worker, which has been very helpful to mental health courts in terms of every client there having somebody who is with them and can be with them, you know, almost every day if they need to get through the system. Because the systems nowadays are one of the hardest things to get through in terms of getting money from medical assistance or getting through the Social Security system. Even getting in to see a doctor anymore can be extremely difficult, especially if you don't have medical assistance. So with the addition of ICM workers given to everybody in the mental health court, we're able to keep people moving along and getting the services that they need.
If I may just add to that, we also, that person goes to the courts, and when we talked earlier about co-occurring court, we also have a case manager that's involved in the co-occurring courts. Now, the difference is, we talked about the hammer before, but truly, I think that's the piece that we weave into the whole formula that hopes to tap into the person's wants, wishes, and desires. So to take that from whatever the criminal justice system is, whatever their issues or concerns, and what are their goals, you know, and how can we assist them in that process. So that in particular, we have 2 workers that are just identified, and their caseloads are made up of those that are in co-occurring court and mental health treatment court. And again, that came out of the discussion between our county courts, the county office, and community care, in particular our co-occurring case managers. And we're looking at possibly putting on another because it is so busy.
But that's a very important component to our system, and we're so grateful to Scranton Counseling that they have made Dennis so available there. And he sells himself short when he's saying, well, he waits for the applications to come from the attorneys or whatever. He has, because he's there full-time at the county jail, he is watching out for the people. He regularly picks up the phone and calls us and says, you know, there's somebody out here who really needs some services, really should be addressed, who might not be seeing the inside of the courthouse for another 10 days or 2 weeks because of just the regular scheduling. But when we get an alert like that, we can address it immediately. But having the luxury, and God bless Dennis, I mean, he goes to work every day in the jail all day long, right? But provides an invaluable service to us. And the ICMs that are assigned to our individual people. You talk about individuals who go out of their way. I mean, drive people to their appointments with the doctors or keeping appointments with their drug counselors. I am always amazed at the extent of the effort and the willingness of the ICM to do the things that they do. That nobody says they got to do it. They just do it because they care.
I think it's important to point out, and it's just to echo what our panelists are kind of communicating right now, is that this is a comprehensive effort. All these players up here, all of our panelists, all the agencies that they're talking about, talk to one another. They're in constant communication with each other about services, about individuals, and that in and of itself is change. That hasn't always been the case. We know that we can be siloed at times, and this is kind of busting that belief system. That there's constant communication between the players at all the different levels, someone can kind of encounter the system. So I think that's important to think about as well. We got a lot of questions during the break about CIT and whether that is happening in other areas in the state, in other municipalities, what the current efforts are. and what the current challenges are to bringing that model throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So, Ray, Chief Duffy, if you could answer a little bit about that.
Okay, well, in terms of the CIT program, I alluded to that a little bit before, that in Pennsylvania, it's just sort of catching on. Scranton is one of the first 5 in the state, and now Lackawanna County, to engage in it. In other areas of the country, like down south, in Georgia and North Carolina, statewide, they have CIT programs, and they're closely aligned with NAMI. In fact, some of the southern states mandated for, those programs are mandated within the police agency. In terms of startup, the greatest resource you have is the cooperation among the agencies. It's not money, it's not it's not hard facilities or a building like this here. It's the cooperative effort and everybody coming together on the same page. From a financial standpoint, doing it in-house can save money. If you wanted to go to the University of Memphis, which now is involved heavily in the program because the original founder, Sam Cochran, his name is, he now is on the faculty there. Our colleagues in Western Pennsylvania pay $2,500 per person. We estimated it could cost approximately $4,500 per person, but because of cooperation and innovation, we've been able to scale that down considerably. The Scranton School District has helped us with our binders and all of our curriculum materials. Our faculty who come and give of their time don't charge us at all. They're experts in the field. Many of our lunches were provided by people who work within the industry. We had pharmaceutical companies give us lunches, and we've had other individuals donate coffee and breakfast and things of that nature. So again, financially it's not that expensive. It's primarily commitment and cooperation and coordination among all of the players. There's no one, I have to reiterate this too, there is no one agency. It's not, although it's a police-based program, the police cannot do it by themselves. NAMI can't do it by themselves. An advocacy group can't. It's really that whole cooperative component that really makes it work, and that should really be the theme of today, that cooperation and coordination.
And if I could just talk briefly about the experience the officers had who have been trained. You know, law enforcement people, if there's anybody out there, help me. But no, law enforcement people are a difficult group of people. There's no doubt about it. You know what I mean? They're a tough crew. And you know, it's tough to change. Any organization is difficult to change the mindsets that we've had for so many years. And me and Ray had talked on the break, like imagine this taking place 20 years ago in law enforcement, probably wouldn't be happening. You know what I mean? Because everybody has the ideas. And like the judge hit on it before, the concept was arrest them, put them in jail, and that was it. But I can tell you, there were officers who were kind of like, they weren't really into it. And when they left that class, when they left that 40-hour training, unbelievable. You know what I mean? They're like the ambassadors of the program now. They go out, and it's great because not only are we getting officers trained to go out and deal with these issues, but they're actually sharing the knowledge with other officers that are on the street. So although they may not be a trained CIT person, they may develop a certain set of skills from a trained CIT officer that may be able to de-escalate a situation as opposed to escalating that crisis at the time. So it really is, and to hear from some of the officers and to see, and like you talked about passion, a lot of them have that passion about that, especially Officer Dombrowski, you know what I mean? Everybody knows that. Like he is like, he's just tremendous. He's also one of our negotiators as well as a CIT member. And you know, it's great to hear him. As a police chief, it's very relieving to hear me, or to hear somebody who's a CIT person going to respond to something, because I know they're going to do their best in the situation to be handled appropriately. So.
Thanks, Ray. At this point, I want to talk about kind of some of the basics and draw back a little bit, starting at the beginning. And Chief, I want to ask you about point of arrest and what happens to individuals when they're arrested. Where do they go? What's the processing like? And kind of generate some questions regarding that. So if you could start us off about point of arrest.
Oh, okay. I'll stand. At any rate, the point of arrest, it all depends on what the crime is going to be or what the person is going to be taken into custody for. If it's a summary violation, typically the citation will be written on the spot. Or there may be times where it might require a positive identification of the person if they have no ID. So we may be taking that person into custody on a rare occasion for a summary violation. When we get into misdemeanor violations, we would take custody of that person. And a lot of things that we have are designed in our policies and procedures to make sure that we're doing everything consistently right across the board. So, of course, we handcuff the person when we arrest them, and we double lock the handcuffs, and we check the handcuffs to make sure that they're not cutting out the circulation, and the majority of injuries, throughout the country, the majority of complaints are a result of handcuffing. So we have that as part of our policy in handcuffing the suspect. We want to make sure that there's enough wiggle room in there for that person not to take them off, but for that person not to become injured. And then we have other policies in place where the person will be transported. If we're going to question that person, they will be brought back to Scranton Police Headquarters for questioning in the event they're arrested from Scranton. Then, after questioning, and if that person is going to be charged at that time, they would then be sent over to the Lackawanna County Central Booking Center. And then at that time, they would go through being fingerprinted, photographed, and there are debriefing sheets at the Lackawanna County Booking Center, which deal with medical conditions and so on, and they go down a list. So that way, we're able to have all the information handy to be able to provide that every step of the way when they go to the magistrate to get arraigned. So basically, the point of arrest would be the crime committed, taking that person into custody, transporting that person to the processing center or Scranton Police Headquarters for questioning first, and then to the processing center, and then arrangements will be made either to have that person released and have the charges filed by summons, or that person will be taken for an arraignment before an on-duty magistrate. And then the on-duty magistrate will hear or will see the complaint and advise the person of the complaint that's been filed against them, and then that person will either be able to post bail at that time or be released.
Thank you. And I think it's important to point out that when we're posing these questions, it's with the caveat of individuals who have a mental illness. And so the point of arrest can occur, and I think the next natural progression would maybe to go to the public defender's office at that time. And Kathy, I'm wondering if you can talk us through a little bit about the application process. Can an individual maybe bring someone who's working with them in a case manager capacity to assist them with that application process? And more so, what can the family do to help you as a public defender kind of expedite the case and make things come into clarity a little bit faster, a little bit easier?
Well, I guess first to address how you apply for a public defender. If a person's incarcerated, there are applications at the prison that they can fill out, and then there's a way for them to hand them to their counselor. We have a detective that goes out daily that picks them up and brings them to our office for processing. If a person is incarcerated and the family is not sure whether or not the application is going to be done, or if they're not sure their loved one is able to fill out the application, they can come in and apply for that person who's incarcerated. If the individual in charge is not incarcerated, they must be at our office, which is in the main courthouse. We're up on the first floor. I say up because when you come in at the ground level and you have to take the elevator to go up to the first floor. But you have to have your criminal complaint, you have to have the financial information for every person in the household, and a completed application. If the person needs assistance in any way of filling out that application, they can absolutely bring somebody in with them. We have applications in both Spanish and English, and we do question on our application process about if there was ever any history of mental health. Because our treatment courts are geared to handle that sort of problem, we like to ask that question up front. I think every one of our attorneys realize that not all times people are truthful on that aspect of it, thinking they may get into more trouble if they disclose the mental health, or maybe their case will be treated differently and they think it would be in a bad way. So anytime a family member is concerned, they can obviously call in, they can speak to any one of the staff and inform them, so-and-so is charged, I believe they applied, there's a mental health history. We don't know if the attorney is going to be aware of that history. What the family members at that point need to understand is until a client waives confidentiality, we cannot disclose any information on the case other than court dates and times, or whatever would be considered public record, but generally other than a court date or court time, we do not disclose information until our client gives us written verification allowing us to do so. But we are able to listen. So anytime a family member or a friend wants us to be aware, we can absolutely listen. Sometimes we'll actually ask people, well, if you're going to come in the office, can you bring it written down for us? This way we don't have to worry about, you may have told the secretary something and it got transposed wrong. But you're absolutely able to communicate any information to either our office or the private attorney that's involved.
Thanks, Kathy.